All right, the vector line self-portrait. I'm going to go ahead and reset my workspace just so it looks like yours will if you're in Essentials. We're going to make a new letter size document, last name dash vector line self-portrait. Now, that's going to give us a nice vertical canvas, and in here we are going to go to File, Place, and we got to browse for our image. Hopefully you took the 10 to 20 images that give you some options as far as what you're going to do. I am going to load this one up. I think it'll work. I do have to rotate it though, so I'm going to hold down my Shift key and then hover near the corner so that I can click and drag and rotate in 45-degree increments. Then I will hold Shift and Alt and drag it to make it a little larger. And I'm also going to press this option up here, Embed. I won't bother explaining it now, but it will make things a lot easier to have the JPEG embedded inside of our vector Illustrator file rather than to have to constantly browse for it if we happen to move where our JPEGs are located. So I will hit Embed, and then I'm going to immediately do Object Lock Selection. And that's going to make it so that if I do drawing later on top, and I decide I want to delete this nonsense, well, it won't delete my photo because my photo is locked. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to do here. Ultimately, we want to have black lines and shapes on a white background, but if you're wearing black clothing or you have dark hair, black is not the best color to use when you're deciding your areas of darkness. So I'm just going to use the CMYK blue instead, or maybe a burgundy, something dark, that I'll then replace later on down the line. So I'm going to use the zoom tool, keyboard shortcut is Z, and I'm going to click and drag a box and just zoom in on my left eye. Now with the pen tool, I could click and drag to create the shape, but I'm not a big fan of the pen tool for this project. Use the blob maker, but again, the blob maker, it doesn't taper very well. So I'm not a big fan of the blob maker either, although both make shapes and could in fact do what we need to do. I'm going to use the pencil tool. Now the way you set the pencil tool up is you want it to fill in your new strokes, but you don't want it to keep selected or edit paths. When you first open, it'll probably look like this. Okay, if I reset it, yep, that's what it looks like. So I'm going to say, no sir, I want that. Okay, so it's going to fill in anything that I draw with my foreground color, which is blue, but it won't keep it selected. So that'll save me a lot of time, because I am going to try to go through and kind of piecemeal color over the areas that I think are dark enough to be represented with this darker color, or the blue. Okay. I'm ignoring the highlights. I'm going to go through and kind of gradually color in what I have. I may decide as I get going on this that I need to make the whole iris dark, but for the time being, I am going to do just kind of that dark outline that I'm able to see. All right, I can see we have a little differentiation between the fold in my eyelid. Okay, we'll define that. All right, the eyebrow is a little bit tricky, so what I'm going to do is the darkest shape, I'm going to go ahead and trace the outline of that. Then something that also looks somewhat dark, I'll go ahead and include that. And there's kind of a shadow here, so I'm going to get that. Ultimately, we're really having to decide what we're going to allow to be light or dark. I could decide that this entire section over here is significantly darker than the surrounding skin and just make it darker. Same goes for this corner. I could darken in that entire thing, but it won't be until I add the white background that I'll know whether that's successful or not. Okay? So I'm going to go add a little extra notch that I kind of see there. Of course, I made it too big. Just a little tiny notch. All right, then zoom out a smidge. Got a little bit of a line there. Did that sloppily, so let me get my eraser. And I will use a eraser there, because I only need a little hint of the line. Same goes here, maybe a little hint of the line. Okay. A little bit of a hint of a line there. Again, I don't know if those will make the final cut, but when I'm starting off, I'm certainly happy to include them. And anything that appears dark to me here, it's just going to get bundled in for the sake of expediency. Alright. And good. Go all the way to the edge of the face, really. Okay, there's an eyebrow, sorts. Okay, got that. And there's kind of a shape down here. And the bottom edge. I'm creating a bit of an implied line between this point and this point. Hopefully our eye will follow that around the rest of the way, but we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and define that corner part of the nose, and then, oh, it's darker under here. So go ahead and get the majority of the mustache. And give a little nod to its somewhat fibrous nature. And there's a bit of a line that comes up. And we have a bit of a line running down the far edge. Alright, and let's see. I'm going to zoom out. My face is incomplete at the moment. I'm going to make a large white box, which I will arrange to send to the back. Now I have to bring it forward one step because it is behind the picture. So I'll bring it forward once. Okay, I look like Magnum PI because I only have a mustache, when in fact I actually have a goatee. So I'm going to get back in here with my pencil tool, and I'm going to try to get the remainder of the mustache. Okay, and because I am drawing those shapes somewhat loosely based on the darker areas that I see, okay, I've got a bit of a shadow on my lip here. Okay, yeah, go ahead and get that. So I'm really just trying to trace the darkest areas. Okay. And again, I haven't really gone through and added a whole lot of detail for the sake of the hair. One, I'm working fast because it's a video. But two, I don't know how much or how important all that's going to be. So let's take our white box, move it out, so hopefully you can see the face is coming together. It's got a very high contrast look to it. Okay. Now ears, you might think you can't draw ears. Well, don't think about the ears, think about the shapes inside the ears. So if we select, oops, I gotta get my foreground color correct again. Get this kind of elongated, looks like a really weird fat Y shape. Okay, there's a bit of a shadow under the earlobe. Okay, it runs down the side of the face just a smidge. Okay, we have a very thin shape and then a very fat tapered shape. Ready? And if I feel like I missed some spots, I can go back over with the tool again. Okay, there is kind of a dark edge running along the hair and the ear. So I could define that portion of it. Right. If I need to use the eraser tool, maybe it'll let me. Oh, I probably did too much. All right, let's call it a day. Now let's zoom out for a second, grab our rectangle, double check. All right, hopefully the face is coming together. There's an implied line leading from the end of the ear there to the start of the lobe. I may have to look for a little bit more information just to help it define, but otherwise I can pretty much make out that that's an ear and not certainly anything else. Now to start, I'm going to make the hair, wherever it is, more or less dark, because I may be able to get away with having my hair be one solid color. But if there are highlights in particular, and little tiny strands of hair that need to be acknowledged, I'll go back in and capture those. Use the eyedropper, get that shade of blue. Okay. Now we'll move around, and I can get these individual little hairs. Yoink, like that, like that. And we'll go ahead and get that whole works. Okay, there's a little notch there we want to get. We've gone a little too far there. Right. 1, 2. 1, 2. Alright, and we'll wrap this up here. I'm going to zoom back out. And so hopefully all that is coming together to form a fairly high contrast face. Then I can move on to do the shadows and the folds of my shirt.